So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining to our session about Datadog and AllCloud. I will start by introducing myself. I'm Yossi Frenkel. I'm the founder of AllCloud, and I oversee the entire business that we have with our ISV partners. Together with me, we have Chris Lackerman, who was a solution architect, but he's also a senior partner solution architect at Datadog, and Ben Ram, who's overseeing the practice of Datadog in AllCloud. Okay, so a little bit about myself. As I said before, I oversee the entire business that we have around AWS with our ISV partners, and Datadog is by far our main partner. And if we'll go to the next one, I'll tell you what will be the agenda today, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the rest. So Chris will give a session about the observability, the Datadog observability, with a special focus on security best practice. Ben Ram, who's leading the Datadog practice in AllCloud, will tell you more about optimizing and securing AWS and Datadog, and we will leave at the end time for Q&A. So briefly about AllCloud. I founded the company about 10 years ago. We are a multi-region company, and we have three main practices. The main practice is around AWS. We are one of the top partners of AWS worldwide. We are also a Restack partner, and we have many people who are giving. We have a lot of competencies, but we also serve hundreds of customers around AWS. The second practice that we have is around Salesforce. Once again, we have hundreds of customers of Salesforce, and we also have a third practice, which is around data. We also do Snowflake, but it's a data practice. As you can see from the slide, AllCloud has about 450 employees, and we are based in Israel, in the DACH region, in Germany, in Austria, and in Switzerland, and we also have a big presence in North America. Okay, so Datadog. We have been working with Datadog for many years, actually more than 10 years, and I'm very proud to say that we won the award of the EMEA Partner of the Year for 2 years. Winning such an award is very prestigious because it means that we are the #1 partner of Datadog in EMEA. And we will tell you why and how. So on a nutshell, we are a premier partner of Datadog, meaning this is the highest status. As I said before, for 2 consecutive years, we are the EMEA Partner of the Year. We have more than 150 Datadog customers that we have been serving them altogether for about 10 years. So it's a 10-year partnership, and it's growing. AllCloud has about 17 Datadog experts. So what we are doing, we are actually helping our customers who are AWS customers, also with our expertise around Datadog. So customers who's looking for the best observability system and run on AWS, the best way for them to get the highest standard of service will be with AllCloud, and we are very proud to be partner for so many years with Datadog. Few more, Chris, another slide. So what I would like to tell you is, and this is the last slide before I'll give the floor to Chris, what are the services, what are the professional services that AllCloud offering to its Datadog customers? So we do workshop. We help the customers with migration, with the architecture, onboarding, of course, and then we are helping them to customize the dashboard, to create dashboard, to do tagging strategy, real-time alerting. We do health check, security check, and actually almost every kind of service, request, or challenge that the customer has with Datadog, and of course with Datadog on AWS, the team of AllCloud will be able to help and support. And this is what we are doing, and this is how we are helping our customers to progress and be much more efficient when they're using Datadog. So this is from my end. And once again, thank you very much for joining, and I will give the floor right now to Chris, who will tell you more about Datadog and Datadog security. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Yossi. Yeah, welcome everybody. Also from my side, like Yossi said, my name is Chris Luckerman. I'm a partner solutions architect with Datadog, working very closely together with AllCloud. Today, we want to be talking about observability and monitoring is a subset of observability. So why do we believe this topic is important at all and it is worth your time? The first thing we need to see is that businesses need observability. And why is that? Well, it's because once companies start adopting cloud technologies such as serverless, ephemeral infrastructure, and microservices architectures, these have huge benefits, obviously, from a capital expense perspective, from a business agility perspective. But they can also have pitfalls. That's because if things are a lot more dynamic as they are in the cloud, moving faster and in more places potentially, the traditional monitoring approach is not enough anymore. So when organizations are lacking proper observability into these new infrastructures, these visibility issues, they lead to inefficient development, operations, and incident response. And that in turn compromises your agility. So what do we believe organizations should do to address that? How does Datadog see the solution for this problem? It is in a true platform approach. The idea is to have a single platform that brings all the parts of observability, whether it's logs, metrics, traces, digital experience data, and many more, and correlates it with each other. Why do we think that's important? Well, it's because once data is correlated and easily accessible in a platform for the different teams, the silos that these teams are often working with and often thinking in are removed. And that allows them to see the bigger picture and feel empowered to actively resolve issues, where before maybe somebody would have seen signs of a problem, but didn't really know how to understand if it was a problem that needs solving. Now, because all the data is available on a central platform, everybody feels empowered to work on these issues. And by making the data available to everybody and having a product that is easy to use, that helps new or less experienced staff to also actively participate in incident response or optimization of your cloud infrastructure. And what that leads to is a higher resilience, a higher reliability, and that in turn increases agility and thus time to market. So you'll actually be able to reap the benefits that you were looking to get in the first place when you migrated some workloads to the cloud. So how do we do that? The way we do that is to offer the Datadog platform, which is a single platform that offers you all these different products that we see here, from infrastructure monitoring, application performance management, digital experience monitoring, logs, and so on and so forth. All on that, on a single platform with shared services that all use the same approach to querying data, anomaly detection, and other platform services like incident management, dashboarding, SLOs, and so on and so forth. So all is great then, if you only approached Datadog. But is that really so? Well, from a DevOps perspective, having a single platform is certainly a great step forward, but those are not the only challenges that organizations see when they move into the cloud. Because what we notice is that once organizations move into the cloud, they're facing very similar challenges on the visibility and agility perspective, not only in monitoring and observability, but also in security. So like I said earlier, the cloud is amazing and technology is an enabler to deliver a huge amount of value and computing capabilities in very, very little time with very little effort. But the larger your cloud footprint becomes, the higher or the bigger your potential risk surface is too. And if we want to move quickly, and after all, that's often one reason why we want to move into cloud, because we can scale up and down quickly, we can spin up new services very quickly without having to order servers and things like that. That also means that all of our processes need to work a lot faster. And what that means is that some of the things we traditionally did, like using our security teams as a gatekeeper, where they do security reviews before something gets deployed, that no longer works. And then obviously, because we have these visibility topics that we discussed earlier from an observability perspective, where you potentially had one tool to monitor databases and one for servers and one for serverless applications and so on, you have the same aspect from a security perspective. Infrastructure security, log-based security, like theme, and other security aspects are often handled in separate tools. And that again leads to the same problems we see in incident resolution. It can increase the time to remediate because the data is so spread throughout different products. And that actually gets elevated by another aspect. And that is that once you move, or if we look at an example of a vulnerability or an attack happening against infrastructure, it becomes clear that the multi-layered approach and the different roles that are involved in running these workloads can have a huge impact on the way security is managed in an organization too. Let's look at this example here. We have a cloud control plane here on the top, and that is running an API. Okay, let's say it runs an API. This API is owned by the development team, and this API contains a vulnerability. The vulnerability itself may not even be the worst that anybody thought, but it makes it possible for an attacker to run a certain attack against this infrastructure, this API. Now, what that means is this attacker is now possible to attack this middle layer, which is a container. And this container might be owned by an ops team that isn't even aware of the vulnerability in the code. So this now allows an attacker to gain access to a container. And as chances have it, this container has provisioned privileges, meaning this container has more privileges than it needs. And what that allows is a privilege escalation, meaning somebody that attacks the API and takes over the API is able to take over the container. And through that is possibly able to attack other components that were supposedly not even connected to the internet, that have specific permissions and can lead to, an attacker gaining access to, sensitive data and possibly even exfiltrating it. So why is it so hard to defend against these? Well, like I said, the top layer may be owned by the development team, the middle section might be owned by the ops team, and the final bottom layer might be another development team's responsibility altogether. So who would be responsible traditionally to detecting this full possible chain of attack here? Is that the security team's role? And is that even possible that they understand all these relationships? Let's look at how teams are usually set up in these organizations. So most often in organizations, we have a relatively large team of developers. The development team is usually quite large, but they may often be overwhelmed by the number of vulnerabilities to fix. And security is often perceived as something that's slowing down the development team. On the operations side, they may also be overwhelmed by the number of vulnerabilities and misconfigurations, if they even have ways to detect them. But they often also lack understanding of new features that are coming out. And then the security team often has insights into the impact that security problems may have, but they may not understand the business context of the services that these are showing up in. So what becomes clear is that either teams have the manpower, but not necessarily the context, or they have the context, but not necessarily the manpower. So what is the approach to solve this? Well, just like we do DevOps, the idea must be to implement DevSecOps, where all three teams work together and feel a shared responsibility for security. And at Datadog, what we believe is the best way to achieve that is to have the same platform approach that we have for observability, also for security. And we can see here that Datadog offers you that the same components that collect observability, telemetry, your logs, your traces, etc., also collect security information and makes it available to all the stakeholders, the dev team, the ops team, and the security team. Let me show you what that looks like in real life. So when we look at Datadog, the first thing I want to show you is this right here. This is a service map. So what Datadog is doing here is analyzing all the different business applications that are running in this environment, and it has automatically mapped their dependencies. Each of the little bubbles we see here is a business service, and the lines indicate communication between services. If we drill down into one of these services, we can see the direct dependencies of the service. We can see upstream and downstream dependencies with their individual service health indicated by the color of the square. I can now drill in to this service and have a look at a dashboard showing me information about the service. And actually, we're going to drill even further into a full perspective of Datadog. Remember how I told you that Datadog is a platform that correlates all data into a single view? This is a great example of that. So what we're seeing here right now is the service overview for the web store service, a web application, where we have a summary with the most important metrics about this application, the requests and error rate, the latency of the service. We have the most important changes that occurred in the infrastructure recently. We can also see the different endpoints that this application is serving, so the different parts of the web application. We'll get back to that in a second. But before I do that, let me just move on a bit, showing you a summary of all the alerts that are currently occurring for this application. The recent deployments that occurred, when was the last time you deployed a certain version, which versions are active? If I have continuous integration and deployment, then I may have, tens or sometimes even hundreds of releases per day. So you can see how this can be very useful. We have our dependency analytics, the infrastructure view, and so on. I won't go into much more detail here. Let me just scroll back to the different components. Let's look at one component of this web application to understand better how, from a developer perspective, we would be analyzing the health of our service. So we can see that this part of the application has open alerts. You can see that here on the right-hand side. So what I can do is I can click this page and get a summary of this specific part of my application. Again, I get a summary of the health metrics, like the request rate, error rate, and latency. I can see which front-end applications are using this part of my application. I can see the individual requests, and I can see the direct dependencies and often shared dependencies with other services. This could be load balancers, S3 buckets, or other AWS infrastructure that this service is using. If I scroll further down, I can see the individual, what we call traces. Traces are individual invocations of this service. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click one of these. Actually, let's click this one down here. And I can see one invocation of this service showing me the different parts of the application and how it's interacting with other services. So we can see this service is talking to a MongoDB database, talking to some other web services, which in turn are invoking external APIs. And I can see the health of all these interactions. But I can also see the information about the underlying infrastructure. Remember how we want to bring the dev people and the ops people together? Well, having the infrastructure and the application data tied together immediately closes that gap between these two teams. So that's what we're getting here. I can also look at the metrics or the logs from this application and understand how, which signals it's emitting, how it's interacting with other services, and so on. So let's change our perspective for a second and imagine we're more an operations kind of person that's more worried about the infrastructure and less much about the applications. What I can do is I can go into the infrastructure tab and move to the resource catalog. This resource catalog now allows me to see all the supporting infrastructure. So if I filter by AWS here, I can now see all the different AWS resources that have been provisioned. And if we scroll down and look for a load balancer, maybe, we can see all the different load balancers that are running. And on the right-hand side, I can see which business service they are supporting. So if I click one of these load balancers, I can immediately see, where is it running? what are the relationships of this component in comparison with other components. So for example, in this case, the EKS cluster, I can see a list of recent changes. At the moment, there are none. I can get ownership information about the team that's responsible for managing this. I can see the service that is running on this, and you can see while I hover over it, I get the most important information about the development team that's responsible for this service. Where is the source code lying? What are the runbooks for this service? Are there any open incidents? So immediately I can see what the perspective of the application development team is. But I can also see the perspective of the security team. I can see that there are 3 security misconfigurations on this load balancer that I can address. So you see how an ops person can also see the perspective of the security people as well as the perspective of the development team. And then finally, let's put ourselves into the seat of a security engineer that traditionally wants to approach things starting from a security standpoint. What I'm going to go ahead now is I'm going to switch into the security menu and look at the compliance step to get a high-level overview of the compliance of my applications according to different frameworks. So for example, in SOC 2 or AWS Cloud Infrastructure Security. And I can immediately see the compliance of my resources by individual rules. So there's a set of out-of-the-box rules that come with Datadog against which I can check my compliance. But I can also look at it from, again, a catalog perspective and visualize my resources. If we do the same thing we did earlier from an infrastructure perspective, let me filter down my resources in my AWS account, colored in this case by whether there are misconfigurations for these components, or whether there are even active security signals like attacks being run against this infrastructure. I can then click one of these instances. In this case, it's an EC2 instance, and we can see that there are a bunch of monitors that are triggering, but there are also security misconfigurations and security signals being executed against this that need investigation. And finally, if I need to understand the situation from a wider approach, trying to get an insight into my AWS accounts and how they may be a threat from possible misconfigurations or attacks, I can also switch into a cloud scene perspective where we have, for example, the AWS Cloud Trail content pack is what we call it, where Datadog uses a predefined set of rules that you can also customize to understand and analyze logs coming out of your AWS account to show you possible attack vectors against your infrastructure or your AWS account. And what we're seeing here right now is a couple of warnings being surfaced here for me. Let's pick this one. For example, somebody has changed the access for an S3 bucket, which by itself may be harmless or may be a harmful activity. It's hard to tell without context. But luckily, because Datadog analyzes all of these signals and it understands which applications are using these buckets, it can give me not only this one single information, it also gives me the related signals for this resource. So it shows me everything else that has been done, as well as the relationship on people that have been modified, as well as related infrastructure and applications that are running on it. So to summarize, what Datadog provides you is complete visibility into the state of your systems, whether it is from an observability standpoint or from a security standpoint, for your on-prem, hybrid cloud, or multi-cloud workloads. With that, I want to thank you for your time and your attention. I'm going to hand it over to Ben now to talk a bit about the service offering that that AllCloud can support you with, especially for your AWS workloads. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was very insightful. Today, we're going to walk through some of the best practices and challenges when it comes to cloud observability. And I would like to start with one of the most important observability pillars, which is security. When we're talking about security in the cloud, we're talking about security at scale. Cloud environments are dynamic. Accounts are constantly being added, workloads are changing, new users are introduced to the system. And with that being said, managing security becomes a pretty tough task. In order to get a clear picture of what's going on in your environment, one of the biggest tools available for us are logs. The more logs you collect, the clearer the picture gets. AWS does a pretty good job with providing us security tools. We have Cloudtrail, DNS logs, WAF logs, network firewall logs, and more. But with that being said, it comes with new challenges. AWS environments are big and complex with multiple accounts and data sources. When it comes to you're basically asking yourself, how do I actually perform correlation between the logs? How do you gain valuable insight on cross-account logs? How is your investigation process going to take place with so many log sources? And this is exactly where Datadog SIEM comes in to act as your investigation platform. You have a central location to ship all your logs, create insights, alerts, dashboards, and basically understand the full picture. Digging a bit deeper, and you'll find that there are a few more challenges that require attention. Let's talk about the logs themselves. In what form the logs are actually arriving into Datadog? How does the raw logs actually look like? If we take, for example, network firewall logs, what do we actually get inside the logs? We get the destination IP, destination port, source IP, source port, but we're missing a lot of information to complete the actual story of what's going on. Where is this IP coming from? Which resource is behind the IP? What destination is it trying to reach? We're basically missing context. And this missing context costs us valuable time during the investigation process. And as we all know, when it comes to security incidents, every minute counts. On top of that, we also might face alert fatigue, a term most commonly used in the health monitoring world, but it's definitely present when it's security. You might be overwhelmed with multiple alerts, and you need to, again, ask yourself, how do you prioritize? How do you distinguish between false positives alerts to the real alerts? We address these challenges through what we call contextual troubleshooting. What does it mean, contextual troubleshooting? It means enriching your logs with valuable information directly from your AWS environment. The context is collected in real time, allowing us to retain critical information in your logs even after the corresponding AWS resources have expired. For example, containers or spot instances. This ensures you always have the context needed for effective troubleshooting. Another value would be alert prioritization. Create smart alerts based on environments, workload owners, and more. Take, for example, an alert regarding KMS key deletion. If it's coming from dev or sandbox environment, you can probably ignore it. But if it's coming from production, someone needs to act. So let's look at an example of how enriched logs actually look like. On the left, we can see enriched network firewall logs. As we mentioned before, we can see the source IP, destination IP, source port, and destination port. In the black boxes, we can see our enrichment. On the top box, we are getting the domain where the IP is actually trying to reach. In the bottom box, we can see the information regarding our internal IP and easily identify where it's coming from. In our case, it's an AWS workspace machine going through a google.com domain. On the right, we can see a Cloudtrail logs. In the black box, we can see the information regarding our account. We no longer need to rely on just the account ID because now we have the account name, the workload owner, and we can definitely decide how to act moving forward from here. Let's see how it looks behind the scenes. On the top, we see our data sources, the DNS logs, the WAF logs, the network firewall logs, security hub, guard duty. And on the bottom, we can see the various AWS services that we use to create our data sets. We're using Athena to query the DNS logs and create mapping of domains and IPs. We're using AWS config to get information on all of our internal IPs, information like VPC IDs, security group names, ENIs, interface. From AWS organizations, we collect the account information, which include the account name, account tags, and the security contact email. This actually allows us to create smart escalation procedures based on the relevant owners of the account. We're also querying AWS EKS to map the IP directly to our pods. We gather all the information and create datasets, which are used by Datadog to enrich the raw logs arriving from AWS. And from there, we can see the results straight into our Datadog Logs Explorer and SIEM, enabling the creation of smart alerts, providing instant actionable insights. To summarize, contextual troubleshooting helps you accelerate your investigation process and make smart decisions based on real-life data. Let's move on to talk about the next pillar, health monitoring. A lot of our customers have faced the same recurring challenges. What do I monitor? How do I set up the monitors? How to maintain a full coverage of my environment? How do I scale my monitors when new workloads are added? The way we solve those challenges is by working with you to define tailored monitoring strategy that answer your business, application, and infrastructure needs. Once we have the monitoring strategy in place, we start by customizing and deploying our monitoring packs that we like to call out-of-the-box monitoring. We took our years of experience with dozens of live production environments and created powerful monitoring packs. These packs contain a set of monitors defined to help you easily adopt best practices into your environment. With over 40 monitoring packs, we support different types of resources and multiple workloads, from server-based workloads to containerized and serverless applications. Our Datadog experts will walk you through the process from start to end to ensure you understand every step of the way. We will work with you to fine-tune the monitors to get an accurate and valuable alerting mechanism and avoid alert fatigue. By using our out-of-the-box monitoring approach, we help you quickly deploy alerts to ensure a full coverage of your environment and let you focus on business and application needs, leaving Datadog and AllCloud handle the rest. My next topic, which would be mostly relevant for people who already have Datadog in place, would be day two operations. How do you actually ensure that your Datadog environment is configured correctly? How do you ensure you're getting maximum out of your Datadog usage? The health check assessment evaluates your current configuration of Datadog APM, infrastructure, logging, and security. And we deliver you with a detailed report of finding aligned with Datadog and industry best practices, including an overall grade and tailored recommendations for improvement. The assessment report is compiled out of multiple sections: alert assessment, which include aspects of coverage and optimization to avoid alert fatigue; cost optimization, to help you discover cost-saving opportunities; log management, where we are going to review the most effective use of storage of logs, and we're going to walk you through how to monitor and control your logs ingestions and indexing while ensuring cost to a minimum; dashboard assessments. We will assess your critical dashboards by reviewing the views and visualizations alignment to your teams and business needs; tagging strategy. We're going to review your tagging strategy to ensure consistency, correlation, and alignment with Datadog best practices. As Chris mentioned before, one of the biggest strong suits of Datadog is correlation, and for that to work, you need a proper tagging strategy in place. By performing the assessment, you can ensure that your Datadog setup is fully optimized, enabling you to maximize its usage and amplify the value it's bringing to your organization. I would now like to walk you through some of our case studies. Salt Security. Salt Security is a cybersecurity company specializing in API protection. As the company continuously growing with multiple customers, their data scale has increased as well as their environment, which made monitoring a difficult task. Like many other companies, they experience alert fatigue and struggle to maintain full monitoring coverage and expanding the environment. Our collaboration with Salt Security focused on defining a tailored monitoring strategy that ensures full coverage and scalability. By leveraging Datadog's capabilities, we introduced the team to new features that significantly enhance the value Datadog brings to their organization. Effective monitoring is about staying ahead of the incidents. Static thresholds alone are not enough. You need smart alerts to adapt to evolving environments. Using Datadog machine learning and AI capabilities, we implemented anomaly and forecast monitors. Anomaly monitors analyze past occurrences, learning repetitive patterns to alert you when anomalies occur. Forecast monitors predict trends such as disk usage, and enabling proactive alarms before the issue actually occur. Going with this dynamic threshold approach, we were able to accelerate their identification process and quickly adapt their environment to uphold the new growth. Datadog today have over 800 of built-in integrations. The usage of Datadog with a vast list of integrations helped the team easily adapt to Datadog and gain visibility from day one. Each integration delivers advanced metrics and pre-built dashboards, simplifying adaptation and monitoring setup. Today, Datadog is fully integrated across SOAR security systems and used by teams at every level, from developers to C-level executives, providing a unified view for the entire organization. I hope that after today's presentation, you are now aware of some key challenges and how AllCloud and Datadog can assist you overcome. If you have any questions, we're going to move now to the Q&A section, so feel free to ask anything regarding what you've seen today. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for your time. Chris, we have one question. I think we have more. Maybe you want to take and answer those?
Yes, absolutely. So there's one question, which is, what are the advantages of Datadog theme compared to other industry solutions? I guess the key point is that, oh, I'm sorry, I should turn on my video so you actually see me as well. The key value proposition of Datadog is in the correlation of making this data available. So many theme solutions in the market are point solutions, which are focused only on cloud theme. And the Datadog proposal is to have this data correlated, to give it context, right? So that not only does theme give you a signal that there, something is going on in your logs from a security perspective, but how it relates to your business services, which services are affected, are these services that are in production or in a staging environment, similar to what Ben explained in his presentation just now. Context is important, and that is the key value proposition of Datadog's cloud theme versus other vendors. I'm afraid I can't give you other examples because I'm not an expert for other theme vendors, so I wouldn't want to provide any other information that could possibly not be correct. So that is our value proposition. There is another question, I believe, which is, how does Datadog handle data residency and sovereignty regulations? Great question. We see that in multiple regions in the world that, countries are looking at different sovereignty regulations. For example, in the EU, it's GDPR. You see different regulations in other regions. Datadog offers you various ways to remedy this. First of all, we offer Datadog in different regions around the world. So there's the EU region, there's various US regions, there's an AP, Asia Pacific region, and a GovCloud region for government and public institutions. So that's one way you can handle it. We also give you ways to handle the risk, quote unquote, of having personal identifiable information in your observability data in the first place. It's not necessarily something that you necessarily need in observability. So Datadog offers you features like sensitive data scanner that can automatically scan your logs, traces, real user monitoring sessions, all kinds of data that could potentially contain PII, and redact it for you, and also flag that this kind of data is, was potentially reaching it, so that you can make sure that this data is not, is basically not in your observability system, and thereby also does not pose any risk for data sovereignty regulations. I see there is a question that I believe Ben could answer. Ben, I'm going to read to you. So we heard that tagging is important in Datadog. If we get started with Datadog, can AllCloud help us come up with this tagging strategy? Sorry. Ben, is that something that AllCloud can help with?
Yeah, thank you. So definitely, yes, this is a part of our offering. This is something that we actually do as best practice for all of the customers that comes to us with support. This is also a part of our health check. And we basically base the tagging strategy on a few aspects. So the first thing is also on AWS environment itself, because a lot of the tags are actually eventually being used in the logs on the Datadog side. So it starts on the AWS side, whether it's environments, services, workloads, workload owners, the different teams. And then we also take this to the next level and actually use those tags and make sure that everything is can be used and seen on a Datadog end. So we're using the unified tagging strategy by Datadog, which is service, version, and by doing that, we're basically ensuring that there's a correlation between all the components in the Datadog side as well. So you're also getting the benefits on AWS, because on the day-to-day you work with AWS, but doing your investigation and when you want to have visibility on your environment, you're also getting the benefits on the Datadog side.
Great, thank you. We seem to have another question. We have plenty of AWS accounts, also in multiple regions. Can Datadog handle that? And is there any best practices around it from AllCloud's perspective? So let me answer the Datadog piece first. Yes, you can obviously monitor resources in multiple regions, multiple availability zones. Datadog supports all of that. You can connect as many AWS accounts to your Datadog account as you like. And when it comes to managing that and managing many accounts within one Datadog org, I believe, Ben, you have experienced that many of your customers have many AWS accounts, don't they?
Yeah, so definitely as a part of like making sure that your entire organization is automatically being scoped by Datadog is creating a smart integration. And what do I mean by smart integration? So Datadog integration support many ways between AWS and Datadog. By using CloudFormation stacks, you can actually make sure that there is an automatic integration between the accounts. And once a new account is being created, automatically there's a new stack being generated, which enables the integration with Datadog side. We actually at AllCloud took it to the next level, and we also added an automation process for helping you setting the baseline configuration for your Datadog account. So for every account added to Datadog, you actually need to go and configure what you actually want to see. And this also comes with actual cost, because you're sending data from AWS to Datadog. So you really want to optimize it and actually configure it to exactly what you want. So by using our automation, we're basically, besides just creating the integration itself, we're also talking to the Datadog API, making sure that we set a baseline for whatever we want for every new account being created. And that basically leaves you with the actual need and manual work to add every new account and configure it when you create a new account and you want to attach it to Datadog. So that's exactly how we do it.
Awesome. There's one question which is very closely related to that. That is something we can answer as well, probably more for me. So why should we use Datadog instead of CloudWatch? Great question. I think the question is not, should you use CloudWatch or Datadog? It's because if you're an AWS customer, you get the best out of both. So what's important to understand is that Datadog uses the CloudWatch APIs. That's what Ben was just alluding to. We use the CloudWatch APIs to collect resource information and metadata information from your AWS account, and then you get additional telemetry on top by using the Datadog agents, the serverless instrumentation, and other products. But it doesn't mean that it's a one or the other decision. The same goes for the security features, by the way. Datadog is very well integrated with AWS native features. And for example, if your Datadog security monitoring detects an attack from an attacker against your applications, you can, from the Datadog UI, trigger a workflow automation to update your web application firewall in AWS to block the attacker. So just to reiterate that, it's not necessarily a one or the other, it's a better together story, basically.
Yeah.
I believe, Ben, there was one question, if we could move to the next slide. Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
I just did, yeah. Okay.
I believe that's it. I don't see any more questions. If anybody in the audience have more questions, now is the time to put them into the QA box.
Yeah, I think
Okay, even if no one is putting the question, we first of all we want to thank you very much for joining. But you know, you have here the contact details. Please feel free to ask, to call us, to approach us, and ask any question that you may have.
mhm.
And we once again want to thank you and have a beautiful day. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you so much for your time.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.